All right, so we are live streaming and we're also going to be recording. Yes. So I'm Elæ Moss, and I am the sort of facilitator octopus at the nodal point of the operating system. Live streaming. Nope. And we're also going to be recording. Nope. Yes. So I'm Elæ Moss. Well, that's creepy. It should keep working though. Anyway, I'm Elæ Moss, and I am here in Lenape-Hoquig, Brooklyn, New York. I will do a little more of a land acknowledgement in a minute. I am a white, non-binary person with brown hair. It's kind of shaved on the side, green glasses, a, queer-coded print top from the 1980s, and I've got a bunch of paintings behind me in a slightly dimly lit room, and all of the readers tonight will also give visual descriptions of themselves. I am here in Lenape-Hoquig. It is the unceded territory of the Munsee Lenape Canarsie peoples. And I ask you to join me in acknowledging the Lenape community, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. I also want to acknowledge that myself, the institutions I work at, and the operating system are in many ways founded upon power dynamics that have relied upon the exclusions and erasures of many Indigenous peoples, including those on whose land the operating system is, well, sort of located, but certainly where the other institutions I work at are located. And this acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And this language of land acknowledgement has been put together by a really wonderful group of people. And if you're interested in finding your own, you may use that link that I've just put into the chat. So we have a really incredible evening together tonight. We're going to be celebrating 2 of our releases for 2021 from Vidhu Aggarwal and Johnny Damm, with our really wonderful special guests, community friends, and allies, Bikash SOM and CA Conrad. And we're just so grateful that this magical, strange internet moment has allowed us all to be in one room from the various corners of this so-called country body of land, Turtle Island, that we find ourselves. And so we're gonna start with CA Conrad, and then hear from Bikash, and then Vidhu, and then Johnny, and all of them will be sharing slides. We have decided to forego sort of a formal introduction, but I can say just in introducing CA Conrad that they are a singularly brilliant poet and thinker and meaning maker and a somatic force in the world. And they have a new book, Amanda Paradise, that is just out from Wave Poetry that you should definitely get. And we're just so excited to have them with us tonight, and they will be giving a visual introduction for themselves. Please join me, maybe turn on your mics for a minute, in welcoming CA Conrad.
Thank you so much, Elæ. Oh, here, let's see. There we go. Oh, let me begin. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much. I want to begin with the land acknowledgement. I'm in Joshua Tree, California at the moment, and this place that I am at in the desert is sitting on the ancient lands of the people from the Mojave tribes and the Serrano. I want to make sure I get that out. And we were asked to give visual descriptions. So I have a very lovely shirt today that I don't know, it's pink and purple, and my nail polish is a black base with a violet coating, and I have a really lovely pink star on my forehead, and prescription reading glasses. That's a good one. So I'm now going to, just give me 1 second. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to read 3 poems from my new book, Amanda Paradise. Amanda Paradise, resurrect extinct vibration. it was written from a somatic poetry ritual that, you know what? Hold on one second. Oh, you know what? Never mind. I'm going to put a link after I'm done reading, and then you can see the ritual that comes instead of me explaining it. It's just too involved to explain it. So, oh, I think somebody is unmuted. Can we see who's unmuted? Oh. Okay, I'm just going to read the poems. It comes from a ritual. It's just too much to explain. But the gist of it is it involved the field recordings of animals that have become extinct in my lifetime. And I'm in my late 50s now, so it's a little over half a century of extinction that this book is focusing on. And the book really lives in that intersection between where the violence against the planet and the creatures meets the violence against LGBTQ people, mainly because the intersection is in the Holy Scriptures. Only in stacking books can the tree feel its weight again. I am so fucking sick of nations and the men who love them. The number of suicides this afternoon hiding in bottom of a cup. I feel feral out here. Found a man who likes me like that. Found a man who lives the way I do. 7 years on the road anniversary soon. You only have to destroy yourself for love until it is normal, which makes love normal, and refuse to live a day without it. An inferno of it. At 16, sleeping with my mother's boyfriend, I was overwhelmed with it. Solids form around you until you struggle no more beneath it. Feel throat open in a word, naming new stars, moving across the ceiling from the disco ball. Constellations with stories to soften hardened hearts. We finished the night reading poetry out loud. Last night, Erica Kaufman's mind-blowing post-classic. Poetry and love sure know how to hang a welcome sign out. Measure and transmit from the pink and adorable telemetry. No more waiting between parentheses. We now excel in the ether while holding hands. On all fours, I am a seat for the wind. Most of my family's international travel is being sent to war. If we judge love, we can kill off anything. Dragged by our hair across the days until they make their way inside our dreams where we get to evict them. I want to thank the one who invented knocking on the door. But no one remembers their name to tattoo across my knuckles. I asked an archaeologist about first time she stuck a shovel in the ground. Her answer had same restorative powers as the grave diggers. When we die, we can no longer wipe the muck off. Just lie there, becoming shit of the world. Eat a chip of your own dried blood. Join me in the cannibal sunshine, fully persuaded by the world through song. Each morning, a blue jay screams at edge of the clear-cut forest. I scream with her at the bleeding stumps. Scream inside something borrowed, like ocean, like skin. I want to see before I die a mink wearing a human scarf. Skin from a handsome, hairy leg. Meow. And one more poem. I dedicate this to when I was a teenager in the 1980s and in the earlier years of the 1990s, I lost more than half of everybody I knew to AIDS. And this is for them. Glitter in my wounds. First and most important, dream our missing friends forward. Burn their reflections into empty chairs. I'm sorry, this window just popped up saying participants can see blah, blah, blah. I'm going to start that poem over because I almost read that pop-up screen. All right, here we go. No, I'm not wearing it. I'm not reading pop-up screens. All right. Glitter in my wounds. First and most important, dream our missing friends forward. Burn their reflections into empty chairs. We are less bound by time than the clockmaker fears. This morning, all I want is to follow where the stone angels point. Birdsong lashing me to tears. Heterosexuals need to see our suffering, the violent deaths of our friends and lovers. So no glitter on a queer is not to dazzle, but to unsettle the foundation of this murderous culture. Defiant weeds smashing up through cement. You think Oscar Wilde was funny? Well, darling, I think he was busy distracting straight people so they would not kill him. If you knew how many times I have been told, you're not like my gay best friend who tells me jokes and makes me laugh. No, I sure as fuck am not. I have no room in my life to audition for your pansy mascot. You people can't kill me and think you can kill me again? I met a tree in Amsterdam and stood barefoot beside it for 20 minutes, then left completely restored. Yet another poem not written by a poet. Sometimes we need one muscle to relax so the others follow. My friend Mandy calls after a long shift at the strip club to say, while standing in line for death, I am fanning my hot pussy with your new book. Will you sign it next week, my fearless faggot sister? Thank you. I just want to put this in the chat for my new book in case anybody's interested. And thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, CA. That was so wonderful. I just so appreciate the work that you have been sharing, and CA has been really sharing a lot of these beautiful visual poems on their various social media channels, and also While Standing in Line for Death is another great title out from CA. So thank you again for that beautiful reading. So we're going to move on to Bishak SOM, and we're so excited. Are you ready, Bishak?
I am, yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Bishak SOM. I am a 53-year-old trans woman of Bengali heritage. I have long, dark hair, which is beginning to gray, and a black jumpsuit on. I also am living on Lenape land. So I am going to share with you two pieces, one of which is this piece right here. Everyone can see that? Yeah. Okay. So this is a piece that Vidhu and I did together, which is in Vidhu's new book, right? I think the title might have changed a bit, but this is my sort of interpretation of the former iteration of this piece. So here we go. Oops, sorry about that. Avatar of the Bindi, or Dot Friend, by Vidhu Aggarwal and Bishak SOM. My limbs are manageable. They recede into my heart. If I put on your shirt, your remote sleeve frays behind me. Your near sleeve flutters up my throat. An ecstatic flow of gesticulations, so American and trusting, so approachable. I hug myself, to keep a bit of you that is always on the go. I want to be approachable. I want to be loving. I never ever want to say stop, but I can't help myself. I always say it. You are supposed to think that I always say what I mean. But you will never stop, will you? All right. You will yank your shirt off me. You will shake my limbs out of their delicate modular casings in order to release that bit. But I've preened it. I've finished it, so it becomes me. A smooth and infinite regression, your innermost product, stop on stop. If you look into my heart, you are lost. And in an unit of sensation, which is nothing, zip, which is both empty and outsized. You cannot see the mirror from the total. You can't identify anybody, any heart. You cannot stop at anything at all. And as you slip and slide, my multiplying vectors snarl up and coincide. Thank you. All right, I have one more piece to share with you all. Let's see if I can. Right. I am going to do this now. This is a piece that, this is an excerpt from my graphic memoir called Spellbound. So it's, I'll just mention briefly from the outset that the conceit of this book is that, well, it's a memoir, but it's the protagonist in the memoir is not exactly me. There's a substitute character who is a cisgendered woman named Anjali. And well, I won't get into why that was the case, but we can figure it out later, I guess. Okay, hang on one sec, sorry. Okay, here we go. Sorry. All right, so this is a chapter in the graphic memoir Spellbound called Early Years. I was born in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. My family moved there from India several years before, as my dad's job had demanded. Dad was a statistician. He worked for the United Nations Population Division and wrote 2 books on demographics, which are, to this day, still Greek to me. Mom worked part-time with the United Nations Women's Guild. We lived in an apartment block across the road from Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia and Rastafarian Messiah. My sister Subrata, who is 10 years older than I am, went to an English school in Addis. We were brought up by 2 Ethiopian nannies, Elæ and Segi. I remember only fragments from our time in Ethiopia, riding go-karts with my sister, the taste of injera, dusty Springfield and Nana Muscuri on the stereo, the sweet smell of Segi. I attended an English kindergarten. Subrata was sent off to boarding school in England when she was 12. My folks told me I spoke Amharic as a toddler, though I only remember a couple of words now. Leba, which means thief, and tinnish, which means little. Subrata came back to Addis Ababa during her school holidays. We'd play cardboard records cut out of the backs of cereal boxes, build Lego houses, and read comics. When I was 6, revolution broke out in Ethiopia, which forced the UN to resettle us in New York. I don't remember that move, but it must have been pretty momentous for my parents. For the first month or so, we lived in the Roger Smith Hotel on East 47th Street, subsisting on Asian fried chicken takeaway dinners. Good evening, young miss. How are you finding our fair city? Eventually, we found an apartment in Waterside, a strange complex of 4 towers clad in red brick, atop an elevated plaza overlooking the East River. Do you like the view, Betty? My parents enrolled me at the United Nations International School, which was conveniently enough 50 feet away from Waterside, which meant in later years that I could stumble out of bed 15 minutes before class started and still be on time. I was put into a bilingual program for some reason. Half our classes were in French, half in English. Mon chat est noir et blanc et il aime faire des bandes dessinées. Ah, mais c'est impossible, Anjoli. Mais enfin, les chats ne savent pas dessiner. My classmates were from all over the world: Germany, Ghana, Guyana, Guatemala. My best friend in first grade was Yuko, who told me she housed a secret rocket in her basement that her dad would commandeer to the moon on weekends. And you can be Colonel Steve. Why do you always get to be Wonder Woman? I loved the taste of her mom's nori rolls. In second grade, I made friends with a small gang of girls, Gregoria, Kaya, and Francesca. Somewhat organically, we began drawing comics on 11 by 14 newsprint. We invented a crew of bizarre characters: a sneezy nose with arms and legs, a woman with a bottom for a head. We'd often have sleepovers at each other's houses. One time at Francesca's palatial digs on the Upper East Side, we stole into her parents' bedroom where, from a chest of drawers, she dug out from a tiny velvet-lined box one of her mom's glass eyes. See? What? In fifth grade, we were hanging out on Francesca's bunk bed when she revealed to me the mysteries of the joy of sex. I remember lovingly rendered drawings of very hairy men. What are they doing with that rubber band? At birthday parties, we'd play Pass the Parcel and dance to the hits of the day: Sean Cassidy, Sister Sledge, the Sugar Hill Gang. Sixth grade meant moving up to the 4th floor of the school. We were all very impressed with the chemistry labs and such. Whoa, that's some serious shit. Oh my God, stop swearing. Once a year, our class would be taken off to New Jersey for camping excursions. There was bug juice, trust building games, apple cobbler, sitting with some of the cool boys during lunch. I haven't shat in days. French class got more intense. Our new teacher, Madame Cuvelier, had flaming red hair in an assertive manner. We called her the Dragon Lady. She petrified us mightily, but I wanted to be like her: bold, confident, sexy. Et alors, cette pièce de Molière, qu'en penses-tu, Anjoli? Enfin, c'est-à-dire... I had taken up the clarinet under the impression that playing jazz was cool. Little did I know that we'd end up playing things like Ebony and Ivory and the theme from Rocky and Woodwind Ensemble instead. Come on, flutes, allegro, get it together. I continued to make comics under the tutelage of Dorothy, who was a year older than I was and took me under her wing. She used rapidographs for inking. I was still stuck at the penciling stage, and Zipatone, look it up, for shading. Whoa, this is like so professional. Just stick with me, kid. In chemistry class, while the other kids were busy with experiments, I'd watch Madame Cuvelier teach French in the classroom across the way. Hey, are you going to help with this titration or just gawp at her all day? I was a pretty shy, dweeby, introverted kid. I exhibited none of the bad behavior that seemed to be mandatory to a high school experience. My pals and I would hang out after school, drinking Cokes and snacking on gummy bears and lick-a-maid. The other kids would smoke, drink, pair off, make out. Our nerdiness exempted us from those particular practices. In the evenings, we'd chat on the phone for hours about homework, computer games, the best strategies for running the dreaded mile in gym class. My friend Harisita's suggestion: just run as fast as you can the whole way, which I did. Oh, gross. Well, clearly that did not work out as planned, only to throw up at the end of it. In French class, Madame Cuvelier had started to single me out. She lavished praise on me continuously. I would visit her in the modern languages department after school. I'd sit there on the floor just below the fog of cigarette smoke and gift her with records. Ah, the jam. Merci, Anjoli. T'es vraiment gentil. I made a new crew of friends, and together we started to get into scary music. Joy Division, Bauhaus, Susie and the Banshees. I began wearing Dr. Martens boots and oversized fuzzy pullovers. We would go to CBGBs to see ska and hardcore bands. I was starting to feel a little less dweeby, a little more dangerous. After classes, we'd head off to St. Mark's Place to buy records, t-shirts, and badges, culminating in a pilgrimage to Bleecker Bob's record store in the West Village with its notoriously surly owner, often hovering about. What are you looking for? Punk, new wave, gothic, huh? I'm just browsing. Dad seemed to enjoy his work at the UN. He was always traveling off to a new destination every few months, Tashkent, Ankara, Geneva, Belgrade. Mom had started doing a master's at Teachers College at Columbia and occasionally subbing at my school. Being proper Bengalis, my folks were obsessed with fish, and the best fish markets were in Chinatown, where Dad would take me on weekends. The Chinese fishmongers got to know him and even picked up a few Bengali phrases from him. Hello, sir. Apni kemon achen? Hello, achi. Thank you. Twice a year, we'd go out to New Jersey or Long Island for Durga Puja or Kali Puja, annual festivals honoring fierce Hindu goddesses. Every couple of months, we'd visit my aunt out on Long Island. These were sleepy affairs, the highlight of which was preparing dinner: rice, dal, fried okra, neem leaves, vegetable curry, and of course, the revered and much discussed fish entree. Can't they see that these excursions into suburbia are killing me? My attitude in these days was spectacularly obnoxious. In 11th grade, Madame Cuvelier invited me over to her apartment on the pretext of returning her dissertation, which she lent to me over the summer. She answered the door in a nightgown, shooed her kids away, and made us a pot of tea. We chatted for a good while en français about jazz, socialism, my plans for college. Ah, te voilà, Anjali. Entre, je t'en prie. I left trembling. At the advanced age of 18, I kissed a boy for the first time, Timo, a tall German kid who used to date Bergatha, the metal chick in our grade. What he saw in the likes of me was unclear. He tasted of cigarettes, which seemed very sexy to me at the time. One time in art class, Frances, who I'd known since second grade, told me, Timo says you're an excellent kisser. For my final project in art, I drew a short comic, something about disaffected youth in a record store, and did 2 paintings that riffed on that comic. I thought I was getting pretty good at art and that I could go on to study fine arts in college. It's looking so good on you. Oh, thanks, Ma. But my folks urged me to follow my bourgeois Bengali calling and become a doctor instead. I applied to and got into Cornell to study biology. I wasn't at all enthusiastic about this, but I thought I didn't really have a choice. You can do art in your spare time, Anju. Graduation day was a bit of a whirlwind. The ceremony took place in the General Assembly Hall at the United Nations. Bergatha showed up in a formal gown and everyone applauded. There was a party afterwards at some hole in the wall in the East Village and everyone was drunk. Timo broke up with me that day, and I kissed 2 other boys and Harisita that night. In August that year, my aunt and mom drove me up to Ithaca in a rented station wagon. I sat in the back with all my boxes of clothes and records and read a letter that my friend Neshama, who I'd known since we were 7, had written me. It's a scary world out there, princess, but I know you and I know we can do this. Thank you so much.
Wow, so wonderful. I'm totally enwrapped and like need to continue the story. I did put the link to Spellbound that's on Abhishek's website. The one at the actual press doesn't seem to be working. So I put the one that's to your website and you guys can still look that up and find it. I also put Apsara Engine there, which is out from the Feminist Press. Okay, thank you so much. And now we're going to have our 2 featured OS readers. And I just want to say before both of these, before Johnny and Vidhu read, that, you know, it's just amazing to be part of an organization that people are willing to engage with me in these unusual ways and to have such brilliant people who are willing to work in these hybrid and unconventional projects together and really push the envelope about what that means. And Johnny and Vidhu have really been sort of stalwarts in this cohort and really have just met this challenge and plowed past it. And it's been such a joy to work with both of them. And Johnny and I, this is our second project together. And it's just so great to work with them again, work with him again. And this is Failure Biographies. And if you don't know, the official launch date for most of these is sort of later in the fall, and that's happening so that they can kind of go through a more formal process of being reviewed, et cetera. And if you didn't see Johnny's great review, Starred Review and Publishers Weekly, we love that for you, Johnny. We love that for Failure Biographies, but they're both still available for community pre-order, discounted now, so you should definitely do them. And yeah, I will let Johnny share with you from this great book, and just I'm so excited to have you all have it in your hands as well. Johnny.
Thank you so much, Elæ. I'm deeply, deeply appreciative of being part of the operating system community, to come back and publish the second book. Elæ gave me the opportunity to design this book, which was enormously satisfying. It was like so it was a great, and the whole cohort is amazing. Daughter Isotope is like my favorite book. So and the Failure Biographies sibling. So please buy it. But what am I going to be doing? So what I should say about Failure Biographies as sort of a way of introduction is I should mention that it offers it's a book that consists of sort of biographical sketches, I guess you could say, of real life artists, of some people who are still working today, some people who have passed, whose works in one way or another incorporate, I think, an element of failure. So Failure Biographies consists of comics that I made primarily out of other comics. So using 1950s horror comics, collaged together with Depression era WPA photography. I try to sort of tell the stories of sort of particular projects by these people. One other thing I should note before I start and share some images from this is that—
For some reason, my sound just went out. Did that happen to other people as well? Okay, keep going, Johnny.
Okay, is that whenever you see a speech balloon in these comics, the text you see there is from the artists themselves, sort of a source from interviews, other things like that. So, okay, I'll share my screen, and I'm going to share 3 failure biographies. All right. Her Here, Adventures into the Unknown, number 35. And this concerns an Argentinian artist named Marta Minuhin, and perhaps my favorite project of hers. Her Here. Marta Minuhin writes a letter. I write to you because I have an idea to be made with hamburgers. The United States is falling down. All the cities are falling down. The artist makes a proposal. What is vertical becomes horizontal. To destroy institutions, myths, and symbols, to create replicas of popular idols, the idea will be to have another Statue of Liberty lying down in Battery Park. The year is 1972. And the people would walk in it. McDonald's would come and cover with pre-cooked hamburgers the whole Statue of Liberty. Then the firemen would come and grill it. And then from a helicopter, ketchup would be thrown and bread. The Statue of Liberty and the Statue of Liberty. One second, this is a little covered on my screen. The moment one person eats a hamburger from the Statue of Liberty, it becomes culturalized. And the Statue of Liberty, eaten by the people, would disappear, but stay in the popular memory, in the imaginary world, where all things never disappear. We are entering the third millennium. We have to do something to demystify those myths, all those universal myths. And to demystify the myth, really, the people have to eat the myth. This is why I write, to ask if you think it is possible that McDonald's will sponsor my project. I went to the Statue of Liberty and took measurements. I worked 1 year doing drawings. But then the mayor of New York forbade it, saying the food could be poisoned and so on. I could not do it, but I would like to create. Time does not exist. The ideas are always there, and you can do it. We can keep in touch. I hope to hear from you soon. The end. So most of what was in the speech bubbles there was from Martha Manuhin's letter that she wrote to McDonald's, but it's sourced from a few other places as well. All right. And for my second piece, this is called Venus Adventures into the Unknown, number 50. And this piece is concerns a Austrian-Chilean artist named Lorenzo Botner. New York City, 1982. The Venus de Milo performance. An armless woman stands frozen on a tall pedestal. My professor in art school told me that I was, in fact, a walking performance. Of course, that started me thinking about the term. What actually is a performance? In some ways, I am an exhibitionist, and I like it. But I was not always an exhibitionist. It came as a result of my handicap. People stare at me whether I dress conservatively or very flamboyantly. There was a time when all I drew and portrayed was myself. And I drew myself without arms and in the nude. In other performances, Lorenzo Botner paints in front of audiences. Brush and mouth or feet, her movements blend with dance. One can have one's own aesthetic appeal. I became an artist by accident. I saw how many statues have lost their arms, but they have lost nothing of their beauty. I'm very observant. I enjoy observing. Botner has no interest in prosthetics. A transgender woman, she also decides against surgery. I had enough of hospitals anyway. My professor told me I wouldn't have to make an effort. I became an artist by accident. It just so happened to me more than I chose it. Everything I did would be a performance. I am an exhibitionist. The end. All right, one more. Fly by Night, Black Magic, number 16. And this one concerns the great Los Angeles assemblage artist, Noah Purifoy. Fly by Night. Los Angeles, 1974. Noah Purifoy stops making art to become a social worker. The reality is that since the riots, nothing has been restored. Nothing has been improved, socially or economically. Art of itself is of little or no value if it does not affect a change. A change in the behavior of human beings. The students at the towers participated in the riot. Most everybody did. They would loot and stash their loot in and around the art center. We permitted that. I had a strong affinity for Blacks, and I wanted to experience us at the level where we lived at. Assemblage puts together two or more unrelated objects. At the time of the Watts Rebellion in 1965, Purifoy directed the Watts Tower Art Center, teaching art classes and organizing cultural events. The community were making Molotov cocktails and throwing them at the police. They were buying nails and tacks from the hardware store and strewing them on the street. Everybody was excited and everybody was participating. Nobody had ever seen shapes and forms quite like this. Melted neon signs, medicine bottles embedded in the molten remains of plastic raincoats, pieces of smashed automobiles. With Judson Powell, a musician who also taught at the center, he headed into the streets to collect. We uncovered them and we thought they were little jewels. The pair returned there again and again. The debris was still smoking. We ventured into the rubble like the other junkers. By September, we had collected 3 tons of charred wood and fire-molded debris. Purifoy and Powell invited other artists to work with them and create an exhibit from these materials. I'd graduated from art school, and I had 10 years of experience vaguely with artists. The resulting exhibit opened in the spring of 1966. 66 signs of neon traveled for 3 years, showing throughout California and in Washington, D.C. But I wasn't an artist yet until Watts. That made me an artist. Noah Purifoy thought he had discovered a future. 2 or more seemingly unrelated objects assembled constitutes the possibility of communication. Art can become a new thing when used as a symbol through which someone becomes better. a change in the behavior of human beings. These fragmentations only mean that I am fragmented. By 1974, this future has not come. Nothing has been restored. Nothing has improved socially or economically. And Purifoy begins work at the Central City Community Health Facility of Los Angeles. I have less now than I ever did. I'm not angry about anything. I promised everyone that I would resolve my anger, and I did. Therefore, I have no reason to do protest art. He eventually returns to art making in the 90s, but now refutes any suggestion of social content. If you make a life's work out of that, you're the one who suffers, not your public. I've been waiting to say that for a long time. I finally got it out. In the Southern California desert, he assembles a sprawling sculpture garden until its death. There's nothing left but art. The end. All right, thank y'all. And real quick, I am a middle-aged man, gold hair, says failure, middle-aged white guy, horn-rimmed glasses. I am also in Santa Cruz, California, which is the land of the Ohlone people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Johnny. I just want to say before we move on to Vidhu that, I can't imagine a more fitting project for this moment than Johnny's project, in a moment when I think it's so important for us to be thinking about what success means in all of our fields, in all of our work, but definitely in the arts. What does it mean to be a failure? So many of the projects that I do with the OS are actually projects that, according to today's standards, would not be a success or would not be able to find success because they are in the margins of what is being looked for, is being understood as valuable, is saleable on the market. And so frequently these things become what gets remembered in 100 years. Someone actually said to me years ago that the OS is a speculative, enterprise, and it really is. We're trying to make books for a future that doesn't yet exist, right? For an audience that we believe is here, but that is not recognized on the market. And so I'm so grateful to have these artists and Johnny's book. And I think that for all of us, this really is like a clarion call to embrace failure, right? Embrace failure until there's nothing left but art, right? And I'm just so happy for that sort of yay failure, right? I'm so happy. Someone said, is the OS a success? I'm like, in the worst possible way. Anyway, so we're going to move on to Vidhu Aggarwal and this gorgeous, unbelievable Daughter Isotope, which I'm just so happy. It was so great to have these all in my hands. It's been such a digital year. I was like, oh, physical objects. I want to pet them. So we're going to move on to Vidhu, and Vidhu will talk a little more about, our work in using the design protocol. And it's been so great working with Vidhu on this project. And I will let her describe it to you, and then we will talk a little more about everything else at the end. But thank you so much for this wonderful work, Vidhu, and I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, so I'm hailing from Seminole, Mikusaki, and Temikuan land. Okay, if I describe myself, I'm wearing a sort of electric blue raincoat. I have a swan bindi, and I'm wearing one of Johnny's failure shirts. So I'm gonna put up a a type of PowerPoint, I suppose, but I want to say that it's been really brilliant working with the operating system because, and somebody's here right now, Julian Chambliss, who I always say taught me that I was a collaborator, or that, or taught me to be collaborative. And so one of the amazing things is any book is a collaborative process and project. And I just really love Elæ's cover for this book. And I really am thankful that I was able to have this vision of this book, which is got a legend and a tagging system that is often more likely to be in science fiction books, right, than poetry books. So it was really something else that this project actually came to be realized in the way that I wanted it to be. And I thank you for that, Elæ. And I also want to thank the other folks in the operating system in my cohort, Ellen, Stephen, Johnny. Also, thank you, CA and Bikash, all of you guys I teach. All of you I teach in my classes. So if there's any students in here, they know your work. So you've really inspired me, but also in the operating system, like with Stanford Chung, like we've just done a collaboration. Like there's an afterlife of any sort of project. And so one of the things that I said in my interview is what I want in putting this project in the world is to have more collaborations. And that's precisely something that's happened as a result of having this community in the operating system. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about a conversation that I had with Johnny about Emily Dickinson as a type of superhero. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen because this book, Daughter Isotope, really takes on a lot of daughters, right? Like I'm a daughter, Emily Dickinson's a daughter. You can, Draupadi from the Mahabharata is this daughter who was born in fire. So partly, and I also think of Michael Jackson as a daughter, like Hilton Owls, so I'm thinking of Michael Jackson as a daughter. So Johnny and I were talking about Emily Dickinson because in an interview with Johnny, Johnny was talking about Emily Dickinson's famous line, "Tell the truth, but tell it slant." So okay, wait, I think I need to share my screen. I apologize for this. Okay, share my screen. Okay, I'm gonna launch this. Okay, can you see this? And then I'm gonna put it on. Okay, it's kind of hard to, okay, wait. It's hard to see my, okay, wait a second. Why? Okay, file. Okay, it's not letting me. Okay, I'm gonna try to do the slideshow. Okay, play from the start. Okay, so Johnny and I were talking about Emily Dickinson, and I was saying that Emily Dickinson is sort of like a robot in my book, but we were talking about comics in particular, and I remembered that I had done this collage when I was writing some of these poems a few years ago, and so. And I was going, oh, wait a second. I was describing my relationship to Emily Dickinson as like the sort of privatized sphere of US poetry in which I was a sort of interloper hacker that was on the edges, invading the perimeter of her circumference. Okay, and then I was like, wait a second, I actually have a collage in which I'm doing this, right? Where it's like a sort of ghost flower, like, killer personality plus ghost flowers, like, right? And that one needs to invade that space of, like, as an interloper, as somebody that's a late settler on this terrain, I see my own diasporic entity as a sort of hacker invader who is breaking into this encoded world. I'm like the bobolink drone that's helmeted, but that person might also be Draupadi, right? And so partly so I was thinking of how one has to wear hazard gear of a certain sort to even sort of enter into the frame of like US poetry. Like, okay, so I just wanted to, so I made these little sort of almost GIF project, right, with Emily Dickinson. And this was sort of inspired by my conversations with Johnny. Okay, so you can see Emily Dickinson's disco head like growing. So the other person who I collaborated with was Rachel Simmons, who might be here. And we did this sort of disco head project because she did these drawings based on some of my poems in Daughter Isotope. And one line is, disco the blue ball of millennial tsunami with Kid Krishna as your charioteer. So she produced this like insane disco ball head, which actually inspired me, right? So anyway, so I did this little GIF, and this is for you, Rachel Simmons, if you're out there, okay? And this is also with Johnny, so you can see, and Dorothy is another daughter, another like orphan daughter that appears in this book. So it could be the sort of figure on the edge, the comic book figure could be somebody, scaling the edges or dancing on the edges of the field of American poetry. So, okay, I'm going to move on. There's your failure, Johnny. Okay, wait. Okay, so as I said in this book, there's this legend. And I want you to know that if you get this book, you can ignore the legend. It's up to you. So partly I was interested in this legend because I was unable to think of an organization for this book, like, because I just do these works that are kind of like variety shows, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes into them. And I was thinking about the arbitrariness of any sort of categorization or taxonomy. And so what was funny is I decided to have like 4 little symbols, and then they grew, and it was impossible to categorize everything. So it was sort of fun, like creating a language like D&D. So this is sort of the process. So if you like look at the book, there's these tags on the edges, and you can play with them whatever way you want. So I just want to give the reader some freedom. But part of the reason for coming up with a taxonomy is because we can't really assume, especially, a lot of us come from like multiple identity positions and places, that we might necessarily have the same archive, right? So this is also a way to like bring in some of the things that I'm referencing, which include, for instance, the Mahabharata and Wizard of Oz and Emily Dickinson and all of this other stuff, right? So you can see that some of these symbols actually are taken from the Indus Valley civilization Harappan seals. And what's funny about them is nobody even knows what they mean because they haven't decoded them. So I'm really interested in thinking about code and decoding. So the other thing is, so you can see like this, the symbols just grew in this generation room, the Book of the Ascent. Like I just sort of, wow, there's like, how many symbols can there be for this? There's a lot, okay? Like they became sort of proliferating, like any sort of categorization system might be. So what I wanted to start off was this book, Daughter Isotope, is dedicated to my father. And before, right after he died, I received this notice from the nuclear facility that he worked at, saying that I might be qualified for compensation because his juices might have been mutated, and therefore as a child, as his issue, there might have been something wrong with me. And fortunately, like I was actually born after he started working in nuclear power because I was born in India. But anyway, this like created this sort of fantasy for me of this idea of this golden child. So I recreated this letter, which I lost. Okay, so just so that you know, it's fantasy. Okay, so golden child. Dear Madam, we are writing to inform you that as part of the potential settlement of a class action lawsuit against engineering giant Beckett, you may be qualified for monetary compensation. Toxic level radiation exposures were known to cause aberrations in the chromosomal cells of employees with high percentages of DNA sperm fragmentation in male workers. You have received this letter because you've been identified as an issue of Vasudev, conceived during the period Vasudev worked as an engineer refurbishing the Watershore nuclear power plant. First, let us verify, are you Vasudev's daughter? Have you ever had the following symptoms? Rapid maturity due to excess luteinizing hormone, obsessive drive to achieve in one or more fields, hirsutism with 5-pronged follicles emerging from every pore, phantom limb syndrome with gold arms, phalluses, and or tails radiating out from the torso and groin region, gold dandruff shed from coruscating limbs after acute degrees of itching, hoarding activities such as making nests out of private dust heaps of gold flakes. Occasionally, one of these nests might spontaneously ignite. In any one of these events, have you ever birthed a giant uranium ingot? Have you ever become a stranger to yourself? Have you ever considered suicide? If you've received this message in error, please pass it on to Vasudev's actual daughter. Do you know her, or has she already self-combusted? Has she already renounced this life for her next best self? Sincerely, Disco Ballhead Law Associates. Okay, so I wanted to also give you the poem that has the lines from the Emily Dickinson collage, which is called Draupadi Interface. So there's a lot of bots and potential computing interfaces in there. So I imagine Draupadi, who's the heroine of the Mahabharata, who's really a badass sort of character that complains a lot and all sorts of things. And it's sort of might be a type of avatar to a certain extent of Kali, which is, the fierce goddess. So anyway, so this is Draupadi Interface. Imagine that she's competing to be your web server. Can I compete? Elbow out the other fledgling saturates of the information flow, absorb the white heat of miscellaneous semi-devis and devas without the help of gravity? Go solo across the Thou Peninsula, Punjab, Niger, Tokyo. Arrive at evolving cartographies of scintillating biodata and gaseous inputs, with blood in my hair, blood on my feet. Move in continua with infinite slowness, like the tortoise in Zeno's paradox. There is something tender and nefarious about this endlessness of always being in a state of never getting out of your head, a perpetual brain drain. I'm a bloated naiad with the killer personality plus ghost flowers. I link with you in obscenity, in rage elements at home and abroad. Do you really think you're in charge? Fill me up on your mutinies. I'll detail the tactical errors. Take me on your acid trip and I'll inform you that you're at risk for certain diseases. A can-do killjoy on hallucinogenic speed dial, sometimes kind. Okay. So Daughter Isotope is the title of the book, and I have some poems in certain sections called Daughter Isotope. And a daughter isotope is the decay particle from radioactive decay, right? It's happening all around us, but it's harnessed in the nuclear industry, right? To to form a chain reaction. And there's an explosion of power that's contained within these sort of nuclear power stations, which we know with Fukushima and everything, it just sometimes they're not contained. Okay, so anyway, so Daughter Isotope Kali Yuga, the manuscript is divided, or the book is divided into 4 sections. And the 4 sections correspond with these cyclical ages from the Mahabharata. And the 4th age, the Kali Yuga, is the age we're on now. And it's sort of entropic. So it's hardly a progress narrative. Rather, as the ages progress, you have this pralaya, like you've got this dissolution that's happening simultaneously, and everything's going to be reborn again. So we're in the 4th age, the age, the most entropic age. So Daughter Isotope Kali Yuga. In the day-to-day, I fidget and trope noxious particles, a superstorm within earshot, where not one but many hideouts are situated, modern and wet. Everything okay? Yes. Another day, a searchable horizon atrophies. I put on my test suit, trailing unstable nuclei and probabilities. I was born too early, a suture of quantum states and hot couture. It's the Kali Yuga, the age of acid tears. I'm ready to augment an era, hoist an asteroid, a father, an engineer. A white lotus surges and activates a cadaver of pure power, victory, Vijaya. It's the age of superstorms and microplastics, rapid outages. I was born too late. I drag a baggie of ashes to the homeland across the nuclear age, today's today. A daughter agitates the grounds of the father's body, U-boats and abacuses, depleted uranium, smudged blueprints, the atlases of empire, and decays into being. I was born too early. I was born too late. I was born another day, another superpowered day. Okay, so I'm going to read 2 more pieces, if that's okay. And so this is called Search Engine Vala. So it's like, I've got lots of search engines and stuff in the poem. And so I'm just going to read it. Because I'm going to take you to an Emily Dickinson bot security system. So I feel like this is a good introduction to it. Okay, so Search Engine Vala. Don't seal the alien in saline. Comets sag in the grab bag. Let them go. Go ceaseless bleats, casements and goats. Go nests and goggles. Go legs. Go one-time income. Go lists. Go kitties. Go log jams. Go daddy. I come with a mission to liberate bubbly ambergris, gold, copper, turquoise, lapis lazuli, timber, ivory, cotton, huge granaries. I come to untamed meats. Go myriad sobs, go degraded plastics out of the guts of whales, go stampedes of products and cases and kingdoms, go coastal, go climates and gems, go soldiers, combat moistens the canto. I'm close to going, I'm close to aging, I'm close to eating my ascent into the cloud. Go clouds, heavenly companions, go sesame. A gate gathers us up, cleansing and emitting the best image of ourselves and our stuff. Okay, so this final poem that I'm going to read is, I have some poems based on like Emily Dickinson lines, and this is Safe in Their Alabaster Chambers, where I sort of reinvent them as these sort of computer bots or security systems. And I have these sort of encyclopedic tendencies in this book, because the Mahabharata was a sort of encyclopedic tome that was attempting to classify the taxonomy of like an entire like sort of belief system. And so I love this line from the Mahabharata. Whatever is here about dharma, profit, pleasure, and release is also found elsewhere, but what is not here is found nowhere else. So I'm interested kind of in this nowhere else, but I'm also interested in weird, like what would happen if you had this like computer that could actually access everything, like that was like a sort of quantum computer, right? Like that could be this sort of bot that could reach out like and had 100 million phantom limbs, right? So this is the sort of imaginary. And so I sort of revised the poem of Emily Dickinson as a sort of security poem, like safe in their alabaster chambers. So this one's called At Security, safe in their alabaster chambers. Engirded, I am assembled by chatter, accident and dicta, surface tension and soul cleansing, the little black book of firearms, modern global flows and the shape of space. Generations of sweeping and clearing irritants, budworms and scabs, of resolving accounts, maintaining and clarifying the filters, grooming amnesiac hair, snarled and matted in swirling, proliferating timelines. What else? An even distribution of impurities, low frequency signals from the Pliocene, Satya Yuga, Big Bang, fifth millennium, rants and summons for universal recognition, regime change, a way out of the body, depressed toward the world, bubbling worlds, full of statistics and interferences, decay. I cast about for companions, fingering secretions, targets, sludge. I scroll through trillions of identical items, bacterium, galaxies, a lot of porn. What is a flesh tone? What is a farm? I chafe at small distinctions, barbs, set up playlists and habitable epithets as snares for the ages. Atomic age, information age, age of wonder, refrigeration. I terminate selective banalities, heroics, exhibition of weapons, kings and faith. In the midst of diversions and threats, riots and audits, the extinction of the larger animals, I look for a girl, any girl, an aperture at once unending. Oh, Betty, oh, ghost, I see you clearly now. I see you all the days of your life, moving through stations and skill sets with your limited athleticism, bad skin, career dysfunctions, and early fanaticism, asking, is there anyone out there smart enough to really, really get me? Through the encroaching mist and static, across abandoned hubs and disintegrating passes, I tell you to follow the white horse to the event horizon, where you will be scrubbed and transferred into a custom disc of super hits. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love to have a moment here if you would all like put on your mics for a second and have a little bit of sort of like thunderous applause and wooing. Yay! Just so we can realize that we're in this 60 people who are just like gagging on the brilliance of this incredible event. You guys are so amazing, and it's been, you know, it's been such a weird year, but to work with this cohort during this year has been so wonderful and such a sort of succor during the strangeness and often isolation of the last sort of year and a half. And so, yeah, I thought that we would have a little bit of a conversation. Obviously, I've also put in the chat, there's wonderful interviews with both Vidhu and Johnny in the back of both of their books. It's something we do with the OS every time. And they're also both on the website, and I put the links to those there. But I thought we'd talk a little bit more about it. And I just wanted to share, you know, something that happened with this cohort, which hasn't happened before, is, and I'll put this in the chat as well, is I sort of transferred the intelligence that I used to do with sort of when I was designing everybody's books and made a set of resources around it, and sort of, because I want it to scale. I am just one person. And what I'm actually interested in is sort of like opening up what we do here to as many people as possible. So now there is something called the Open Design Protocol, and it's what these folks used. And well, Johnny did comics, so like he's doing a little bit else, but this whole cohort was given this Open Design Protocol, and it's now on the website, and it's there for anyone to use and sort of like work through the way that we do our process. Even the sort of publishing agreements and everything is there. You can start your own press, you can do your own work, you know, decentralized power forever. So that more of us can be working and doing work and spending less time waiting for someone to knight us with permission or value, and realizing that we can make it ourselves, and that's where it lives. So anyway, I just want to open the floor up for questions. If anyone wants to sort of, feedback or have a question for any of these people. And also just thanks again to CA and Bishak for being here. Your work is so wonderful, and it was great to have you with us tonight. You're such beautiful lights.
Thank you.
Questions, comments, general, just glee and appreciation. I mean, no pressure. If Vidhu and Johnny, if you guys want to chat a little bit about sort of anything else about the process. I mean, something that was great, I can say, in working with Vidhu, because I'm someone who also does a lot of sort of formal work around design of making forms and taxonomies. And so it was great to work together on that. And I think we all thought a lot together this year about what it meant to make objects, right? So a lot of what we're doing right now is thinking about not only how to make a book or what a book looks like or what it means to go from making writing in a computer or writing on paper to actually making an object, right? So that's a lot of what we've always done. But this year we also thought really critically about sort of the speculative futures that we're moving towards. Are these things going to be available in book form? Are they going to be available online? Where are we heading, right? And so what are these other places that we can move these objects, and what other platforms or forms can they take? And so that's been a really great conversation that both of these guys has been engaged in. And as Vidhu said, she already did a collaboration with Stanford, and there's more of that sort of coming with this cohort. So that's really exciting as well. Johnny, Vidhu, anything to add?
I think Beth is trying to say something, Beth.
Yes, Vidhu, I wanted to say I'm an older woman, and I really appreciate the language and the images that all of you used. The juxtaposition of the poetry and the art was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
I have a question for Johnny, actually. Johnny, I was curious about what the specificity of the medium that you chose, in the sense of, doing comics with collages using old science fiction and horror comics as the raw material, how that aligned with the theme of your book, which is the cataloging these biographies. How do those two practices coincide conceptually in your mind?
That's a great question. I mean, in a tricky question, but I mean, in some ways, I mean, I'm obsessed with old comics, and in doing this particular project, I got even more obsessed with these particular comics. I think that, I mean, the other sort of voice, like there's a lot of different sort of voices running through failure biographies, but particularly the other voice, the often kind of anonymous voice, is the people who originally drew those comics, which were often out of, they were often like they were under pseudonyms. I try to credit them just by giving the original titles of the comics, but I feel like that was another sort of disposable medium, like particularly sort of a disposable medium in the 50s. And then of course, I mean, hovering over it is that, these were comics that were made right before the Comics Code, in which the horror comics didn't even exist a couple years after. So somehow pairing that and sort of this idea of the horror with what I'm trying to do is sort of a celebration of failure, I think. So I want to celebrate these comics. I want to celebrate this sort of idea of the artist. I also want to sort of harness the sort of playfulness, particularly of horror comics, which are hilarious while also really, really dark. And so I think that sort of paired at least with sort of the subject matter of trying to look at, you know, oftentimes like thwarted projects and celebrate them while also, you know, kind of enjoying sort of the horror of the failure. Thank you for that.
I feel like things being hilarious and yet dark is kind of a vibe for 2021. Yeah, like there's ridiculous things happening right now. Like the world is sort of absurd in this deep, like Ionesco way, but also dark. Yeah. I always feel like I'm hosting stand-up. I always say that at an event. I'm like, I'm on stage, just kind of riffing in the silence, which I'm happy to do. Bishak?
I had a question for Vidhu also, which is, you know, I think Vidhu and I have talked quite often about how we sort of bristle at writing stuff that's personal and like direct. And I wonder, you know, in my case, like doing my memoir, I had to have a substitute character to replace me because I didn't want to be too direct. And I think, you know, Daughter Isotope is clearly has more personal kind of roots as a book rather than your first book, I think. And I wonder like how, if you felt like how close you were to being personal, how uncomfortable that was for you.
Yeah, well, I definitely have some poems in this book that are sort of hidden in there that are more sort of narratively personal in a way, but I often think that the personal is impersonal. I think the first book, Trouble with Humpadori, was actually both very personal and very impersonal. Like I think of it as a sort of race monster book in which, you know, I'm dealing with this sort of abject sort of sense of the racialized body as a commodity. Whereas with this book, I think I actually purposely tried to let myself go into a more sentimental sort of space and see what happened. And, you know, that it was almost like if something sort of made me cringe, I kept it. Yeah, so I do think it's really uncomfortable. We both have talked about that discomfort. Yeah. And but what I would say is, I guess what I would say is that anything that I think of as personal is not, it's like, you know, it's occupying this larger space than my specific life history or my sentiment or my emotion. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Petra has a hand up. So Petra. You're muted.
Petra, unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you? Yeah.
We have two computers in the room, so someone.
Okay, great.
You can hear me through Stephanie's computer.
Yeah, we can.
So amazing evening. That was such a great evening. I loved it so much. And I actually don't have a question. I just have a comment for you all. I so much appreciate the way that you all integrated the visuals and the readings. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you shared the screens and allowed us to read along. And I just loved having particularly the graphic work read out while also seeing it. I just thought that was amazing. And I have never quite experienced in this way before. So both Bishak and Johnny, I just loved that you read that out and the voice with which you read it out. I want to now always receive your work in this way. I would like to have it as an audio file as well as the visual file, because that was absolutely amazing. And both, you know, CA and Vidhu, the way that you both are integrating visuals into the work, and Vidhu in particular, how you're explaining that is gorgeous. And I also love how you're of course embodying it with your bindi. So that was a beautiful moment of connection between you and Bishak. So thank you everybody for this gorgeous reading.
Thank you so much for that comment. Really appreciate that.
Could I ask a question?
Please.
So sorry that I can't join you all on video. I'm in transit, but this was so wonderful and I'm really appreciative. At risk of asking like a very stereotypical question, I imagine that both of you probably started these projects well before COVID, but like especially given the topic areas, like thinking about failure and thinking about kind of scientific decay and family, I'm curious about if the projects changed at all during COVID or if there was any evolution that kind of happened once the pandemic started.
Wow, that's a connection that I hadn't even really thought of. I'll say that for me, I mean, the project was done, but there is really some weird resonances. I mean, that last piece that I wrote, I mean, and that I read, the Noah Purifoy one. I mean, there's something about him being in the middle of the nowhere, moving to the middle of nowhere. Actually, it's a Joshua Tree where CA is, and he has you can still go see his. I think they call it the Noah Purifoy Foundation now. But that moving to the middle of nowhere and totally isolating yourself, which for Noah Purifoy, I mean, seemed really painful. It actually seemed quite painful because he felt so betrayed by art. That had extra resonance, even though I'd actually finished it not long. That was one of the last pieces I wrote not long before the pandemic started.
Nikhil, it's so good to see you, cuz, okay, I just want to say that. I'm like, even with the picture, but you know, it's interesting because I have these, I didn't read this poem tonight, but I have this poem called Avatar of the Virus. And then I was also doing this dance show in San Francisco in which, you know, I was thinking of wearing a mat. Like I was responding to the situation at the point we were just hearing about COVID. It was in February. And I remember this was before we were in lockdown or anything. And so it's interesting because I feel like in some ways these poems have this different resonance. Like I wrote Avatar of the Virus a while ago. But then when I read it now, it feels different, right? There's all these viral things happening, both in terms of the virus as this sort of computer glitch or something that spread, and also like virus as disease. And I didn't read it today, but I do have this Avatar of the Virus poem, and that I actually worked with another artist, Kathy High, who during the pandemic made a video in relationship to that. So I feel like, yeah, I mean, the contemporary moment changes one's relationship to the work, even if it was written at a different point. And I feel that.
Thank you both so much. I really, really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Unless anyone has another question, I sort of feel like ending on that thought about Avatar of the Virus and thinking about how relevant these works are right now is kind of a great note to end on. Just kind of inviting you all to engage with these. They really are amazing works to teach, I think, incredibly relevant now. And something that I guess I'll also put in the chat in case you don't already know this is that in keeping with our desire to be accessible to all and not gatekeep, we do put everything as it is published onto the open source, open access library. So these titles aren't there yet because they haven't hit their street dates. But if for whatever reason, like if you're working with a student population that would not be able to buy these books, we always prefer that you just like use the PDF, don't not teach the book because they can't afford to have it. Like I mean, I can send it to you now. You can reach out to me or they'll be up on the open access library. Something that's happened a lot in the last couple of years is we've also recommended like, we would love you to help support these artists. So give your students the book for free and then, you know, raise a little money to have the person come to your class so that person can actually have the cash, right? So, you know, that's something that is also a possibility. We want, you know, to have these people not only their work be supported, because that often doesn't trickle down and really result in money for people. So we want to support these humans and have them be able to keep making their work. And that's one of the reasons why giving you access to the PDFs is something that is always something that we're committed to. So just thank you all for being here tonight. And thanks again to Vidhu and Johnny and Bikash and CA Conrad. I just love you all so much. And you make me feel like we're not all, going to hell. I mean, yeah, it's it's complicated, but just so much love to everybody in this room. And thanks for being here with us tonight. Feel free to turn your sound on for more celebratory.
And thank you, Uncle, and all of these family members and colleagues and former students and current that have showed up. Thank you so much, friends, for celebrating with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Glad you were here, CA.
Thank you for having me. It was great.
CA.
Thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording.